Hi, this is Charles Haley, five-time Super Bowl champ.
And my name is Lori Lynch, Senior Vice President, Customer Success for Istation. And we want to welcome you to our reading series called Istation Reads, in partnership with Tackle Tomorrow. Charles and I are excited to introduce this amazing reading series where you're going to hear from a lot of personalities reading Istation books. We'll ask you some questions at the beginning of each story, and by the end, we'll follow up to see if you got the right answers. So join us for each episode. You'll see us on Istation's YouTube channel. If you love it, share us on social media. We look forward to working with you, and as Charles always says,
It doesn't matter where you start, it's where you finish.
You're so right, Charles. Okay, everybody, let's get started. Hey, Lori from Istation. We have a cool story for you today. It's called Bees at Risk. So thanks for joining us on this episode of Istation Reads. We're going to hear from a really cool PhD student and scientist. Her name is Shelby Kilpatrick, and Shelby is a PhD student right now at the Pennsylvania State University. She began studying insects at age 10, and then by the age 13, got a beekeeping scholarship and really found a love for studying bees, and in particularly honeybees. In 2013, she served as the Texas Honey Queen. Who knew there was a Texas Honey Queen thing? Kind of fun to learn about it. She graduated from Texas A&M with a double major in entomology and agricultural development. She's going on to do some really cool stuff. What was really interesting about Shelby, and one of the main reasons we focused on having Shelby read with us, is not only is she a scientist, but she's also the discoverer of a new species of bees. She was in the West Indies on an island called Dominica, and while there found this new bee species, and it is named after her. But I bet you can't say this 10 times fast. Lasioglossum Dialictus Kilpatrickae. That is the name of the very small bee that she found and is named after her. So Lasioglossum Dialictus Kilpatrickae. So try to say that again. She has a love of reading. Tells us this: as a scientist and educator myself, I'm constantly learning. Reading is the best source for me to do that. It allows me to discover new things, and I hope that you discover new things from reading and the world around you. So really cool stuff from Shelby. Let's take a quick look at some questions that I want you to focus on while we're listening to Shelby Kilpatrick read the story, Bees at Risk. Number 1. As bees fly from plant to plant, what do they spread? Number 2, did scientists find that cell phone towers were affecting bee colonies? Kind of an interesting question, huh? Number 3, what is one way scientists are rebuilding bee colonies? So some really great questions and a really interesting story read by an amazing scientist. So let's think about these. Listen closely. I'll meet you at the end of the book and we'll check for understanding. I'll see you there.
Hi everyone, my name is Shelby Kilpatrick and I'm a PhD student at the Pennsylvania State University. One of the things that I really like about this book that we're going to read today, called Bees at Risk, is that it gives information about honeybees, which is one of the important species of pollinators that provide food. And we're going to learn about that process here in a short while. But first, to introduce a little bit more about myself, I started studying insects at the age of 10 when I joined a local 4-H club in Texas. About 3 years later, I earned a youth beekeeping scholarship through my local beekeeping organization, and that's really where my interest in bees and learning in honeybees really started. In 2013, I also served as the Texas Honey Queen, a representative for the beekeeping industry, and I got to travel the state and meet a lot of people and get to learn and share honeybees with them. I recently graduated from Texas A&M University with a degree in entomology and a double major in agricultural leadership and development. During my studies as an undergraduate student at Texas A&M, I got to participate in a lot of different research projects on insects, including bees, which I worked on in Dominica, which is a small island in the West Indies. But while I was on Dominica and learning about the bees there, I discovered a new species, and one of my colleagues after me and it's a species of sweat bee. It's very small, Lasioglossum Dialictus Kilpatrickae. My current research focuses also on bees. I'm currently updating the checklist of bee species in Pennsylvania, which is providing important information about the different species that are here and where they're distributed so that we can better understand if their populations are at risk, like honeybees have been in the past, and where they are today to work for conservation. So those are some of my projects, and with that, let's get started with reading Bees at Risk. When you dig into a bowl of ice cream or eat a sandwich, do you ever think about bees? You should. Bees make many of your favorite snacks possible. Bees help put almonds in Rocky Road ice cream, peanuts in peanut butter, and strawberries in jam. But bees are in trouble, and if they don't get help, some of your favorite snacks just might disappear. Now, bees on the job. Every year, beekeepers load boxes of bees into big trucks. They drive the bees to farms all over the country. Farmers pay the beekeepers to release millions of bees on their farms. The bees fly from plant to plant. As they do, they spread pollen. That helps the farmer have a good crop. These days, beekeepers who rent bees to farms are worried. Their bee colonies are shrinking. Why are America's bees disappearing? How bees pollinate an apple orchard. 1. The beekeeper releases millions of bees into the orchard. 2. For 2 weeks, the bees buzz around the orchard, landing on blossoms. 3. Each bee collects pollen on its fuzzy body from the anther of each blossom it visits. 4. When the bee visits another blossom, it pollinates it by leaving behind pollen on the stigma. 5. Each time a blossom is pollinated, an apple begins to form. Colonies in trouble. For millions of years, bees have been living and working in groups. In a healthy bee colony, thousands of bees work together. Each bee does its job to make sure the colony survives. The bees work until they die. Today, this age-old system is breaking down. Colonies aren't working as they should because worker bees aren't doing their jobs. For some reason, adult bees fly off and simply disappear. The hive is left with only a queen, her eggs, and a few young bees. Because the worker bees do not return with food, the colony soon dies. Scientists call this colony collapse. Inside a bee colony, the queen spends all her time laying eggs. The youngest bees clean the cells of the bee nursery. When they are older, they become nurse bees. Then their job is to feed the larvae that are growing into new bees. A bee's next job is to store food and make wax for the honeycomb. Later, it will become a guard bee and keep intruders out of the hive. The oldest bees work outside of the hive. It is their job to search for flower nectar. They sip it from the flower and make it into honey. The honey that bees make feeds the larvae and all of the worker bees in the hive. When a bee finds nectar, it does a wagtail dance. The dance is a message telling other bees where to find the nectar. Investigating the problem. Experts have been studying the bee problem for years. They've learned what happens when a bee colony collapses. They just aren't sure why it happens. After asking a lot of questions, they've come up with a few hypotheses. The first hypothesis, are cell phones deadly? Some experts once believed that strong signals from cell phone towers were confusing the bees. They thought the signals might be making bees forget how to do their jobs. To test the idea, scientists made maps showing where bee colonies were collapsing. The maps showed that bee colonies were dying even where there were no cell phone towers. That told scientists that cell phones were not to blame. Are bees eating too much junk food? When bees aren't working on a farm, beekeepers feed them a kind of sugar. It's not the same as nectar. Some people have wondered if the food is bad for the bees. Most experts don't think so. Scientists compared bees that ate different diets. They found that bee colonies that eat only nectar sometimes collapse too. Are bees being poisoned? Because many farmers use pesticides, bees collect more than nectar from plants. They may be getting poisoned too. This may play a part in the bee problem. We're still not sure. Are bees dying of stress? Beekeepers spend so much of the year trucking bees around the country to pollinate crops. Since bees never work that many months in nature, they may be overworked. Perhaps working for people is making bees sick. Are mites wiping out the bees? Mites are tiny bugs that burrow into the body of the bee. That makes the bee weak. Scientists are still looking into this possibility. Experts weren't sure any of these problems would cause so many bees to disappear. They kept asking questions. Now, they may have found the real answer. How? They finally found something that all the sick colonies have in common, a virus. The virus is carried by the mites that live on bees. When this virus attacks bees, it makes them unable to move. When the sick bees cannot return to the hive, this explains why worker bees disappear. Even if this solves the bee mystery, the search is not over. There is still no medicine to fight the virus. Do we need bees? You might think that having fewer bees isn't a bad thing. After all, they sting people. Do we really need bees? The answer is yes. If bees keep disappearing, millions of flowers won't be pollinated. Then plants won't make fruit. This will cause food shortages. Foods with fruits and nuts will disappear from store shelves. When you want to buy blueberry muffins or apple pie, you might not be able to. People are working to avoid these problems. Researchers are looking for ways to keep bees healthy. Beekeepers are not letting their bees mix with other colonies. That will help keep the virus from spreading. Some are also buying bees from Australia. The new bees can help rebuild America's bee colonies. One popular ice cream company is even getting shoppers involved. Each time customers buy ice cream with strawberries, cherries, honey, or nuts, the company gives part of the profit to bee research. So next time you're hungry for ice cream, maybe you can help the bees too. Thank you so much for listening to our reading of Bees at Risk today. As a scientist and an educator myself, I'm constantly learning, and reading is one of the best sources for me to do that. It allows me to discover new things, and I hope that you discover new things through your own reading and learning in the world around you. Thank you.
Welcome back. So, while Shelby was reading Bees at Risk, what'd you think of the questions? Let's review. Number 1, as bees fly from plant to plant, what do they spread? Number 2, did scientists find that cell phone towers were affecting bee colonies? And number 3, what is one way scientists are rebuilding bee colonies? There's actually 2 answers, so just think about one, use that as your answer. If you want more time, press the pause key. Press it, hang out, think about your questions and answers. When you're ready to resume, press the pause key again, and we'll meet you in the next section where we'll reveal the answers. I'll see you on the other side. Okay, here we go. What'd you think? Number 1, as bees fly from plant to plant, what do they spread? If you said, as bees fly from plant to plant, they spread pollen, you got it right. Pollen is actually a great way to spread and grow and do new things when you're moving that pollen from plant to plant. So that is something that helps our plants and our fruits and vegetables grow. So bees are pretty essential. Number 2, did scientists find that cell phone towers were affecting bee colonies? No, they didn't. they found that even where cell towers were not present, bees were still dying. So cell phone towers was not the cause. And number 3, what is one way scientists are rebuilding bee colonies? There's 2 answers, but number 1, not allowing bee colonies to mix that are carrying the virus. Number 2, bring in bees from Australia that will help America's bee colonies grow. So a couple of different ways they mentioned there towards the end of the story that they're helping to rebuild those bee colonies, because as we know, bees are essential. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this episode of iStation Reads. Hope to see you on the next one. Until then, take care, everybody. We'll see you soon. Lori here again. Thanks again for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the story. Remember, tune into our iStation YouTube channel to check out iStation Reads. If you love us, share us on social media. Hope to see you again real soon.